judges.
Why
why should I stay with a man who's not going to be loyal? But you answered so much. I can see her as Zara. Zara looks like a baby. Two. But like, real ticket last year. Last year was this time. Oh, and we got this. Guys, I miss Tisha. There, she's real hungry. This is why I have my iPad with me. I have my iPad with me. But my tab also I bring my technology set. Give it to you. How much is that? This place. You have to have it. And I'm not worried about it.
A gentle reminder to everyone who is present here today. There are also a few housekeeping rules that everyone should abide as a show of respect to the debate competition. First, kindly remain seated and please maintain silence throughout the debate. And please ensure that your mobile phone is switched to silent mode. Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning. I am pleased to welcome you to the Putrajaya Federal Territory Parliamentary Style English Language Debate. I am Ryan Imran and I will be the speaker for today. Ladies and gentlemen, before we proceed, allow me to read out the rules of the debate. Number 1, the proposition team is known as the government, while the opposition team is known as the opposition. Number 2, each debater is given 8 minutes to deliver his or her speech. Number 3, the timekeeper will ring the bell once after the first minute and at the end of the 7th minute to signal the time allocated for points of information. At the end of the 8th minute, the bell will be rung twice. Play cards will be used by the timekeeper to indicate the remaining time left at intervals of 1 minute. Number 4, a maximum time of 3 minutes will be given to both teams to prepare for reply speech. Number 5, during the reply speech, the timekeeper will ring the bell once at the 3rd minute to signal that the debater has 1 minute left. At the end of the 4th minute, the bell will be rung twice to signal the end of the debate. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce the key persons in today's debate. The timekeeper for today's debate is Michelle Zafira and Zahra Irdina. On behalf of the House, I would also like to extend a special welcome to the panel of adjudicators. Please welcome Mr. Taufiq bin Muhammad Amin as the Chief Judge, Madam Aililiana binti Ahmad, Madam Nur Hazrin binti Anwar, Mr. Geoffrey Lim Puchien, and Madam Nur Fatimah binti Auzir. Now, I would like to introduce the debaters for grand final round debate. On my right is the government team, represented by the Prime Minister, Muhammad Aryan Haras bin Muhammad Nasir. Next, we got the Deputy Prime Minister, Anas bin Muhammad, and the government whip, Arfan Rais Shah bin Azan Adli Shah. On my left is the opposition team. They are Sarah Nurlisa binti Hizatul Ishaq as the opposition leader, Putri Nur Kemilia binti Nur Arzali as the deputy leader of opposition, and Shantosh Anak Lelaki Pat Manakan as the opposition whip. Without further ado, let us begin today's debate with the motion, this House believes that academic success is overvalued in today's society. With that, I would like to call upon the Prime Minister from the government to deliver his speech.
Panel, the card that we received on your Parent Teacher Day speaks more volume than just a bunch of letters. It tells a child how they view themselves. It tells a parent how they evaluate their children, and it tells society how you allocate opportunity and status to these children. But before that, Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I bring the most honorable judges, meticulous timekeepers, worthy adversaries, Mr. Speaker, brothers in government, and all members of the floor. First of all, what is the case division on government? So as first speaker, I'll be very clearly providing you the case setup for this motion, providing a clear argument on why this overvaluation actually happens. My second speaker will extend an argument on how it degrades soft skills in society and respond to opposition. My third speaker then will summarize proposed clashes to ultimately justify to win on government. First and foremost, definitions and framing. First definition, what is academic success? Academic success refers to society's conventional way for you to book a metric and measure how good is a person in the education system. For example, it looks like things like having your rankings, how good you are in an exam, or having elite scores, a straight A plus in SPM. These all fall under the category of academic success. Secondly then, how does overvaluation look like in today's society? It looks like academic success becoming disproportionately far more important in relative to other forms of competency in humans and other developments. We think it looks like things how academic success is becoming the predominant thing which evaluates the human value. It looks like life opportunities becoming graded, and it also looks like, which is very important here, social media, and it also looks like how social media becoming the catalyst for comparison. Look, and this is very important, everyone. It is absolutely human instinct for you to compare yourself with others. It's human nature for you to be better than others, to be dominant, and to compare yourself. And in a world where social media is very accessible and very easy to see, comparison is absolutely amplified. Moving on, third definition. How will a world without this narrative, essentially look like, and why it will be better? First, it doesn't mean that we're going to neglect the value of academic success. You have to understand, in both sides of the house, both worlds still have a stress and focal point to actually pursue and actually elevate the academic success. The only difference is that you as a human person, the only lens which actually evaluates you as a person is not just your academics. You will take up other things like your leadership, your soft skills, your ability to care, meaningful relationships. This is all, you will open up the array of what makes you as a human. Moving on. What essentially is the stance from government? The stance is then about whether academic success is important enough, and it's not about whether overvaluation is good or bad. All government has to do to prove in this debate is why this overvaluation is absolutely real, and we'll be doing that by explaining the harms that manifest through it. We believe in government there are four main pathways to prove to us through its victory. Number one, we have to prove why this emphasis on academic success creates unnecessary emotion. Secondly, why this perception of academic success neglects other forms of critical soft skills. Thirdly, is how will a realistic world where this overvaluation looks like and how it greatly harms the mental health. Lastly, is how this overvaluation has ruined and diminished social relationships. So moving on, arguments. So the first argument is simple. Why academic success is overvalued, and there will be three main analyses. Number one is that that in today's society, social media is far more accessible. As the framing that I have mentioned in my framing, because we live in a world where people will follow trends, you'll post about your life, share stories, it's far more likely that you will see others and you will compare others. So the bottom line is, comparison is much more amplified. The younger generation will experience comparison are more widespread, the younger generations will see comparison happening more. Secondly then, what is the main reason that overvaluation actually happens? Look, as students, when you have been taught throughout the entirety of your childhood in the school year that your worth and your value as a student is tied to your academic success, what it does is when you actually fail and you're unable to reach the societal standards that they put upon you, you hurt, you feel down, you feel you are detached and you are attacked of your identity. This is extremely harmful because when this detachment actually happens, the longer you feel more attacked, the longer you feel attacked with identity, you feel hurt. It causes things where you develop the mental depression. You feel like you lose your meaning and value as a student. This is ultimately harmful. A direct evidence to show you how this is actually true is, for example, of how we can look at the Gaokao exam in China. In China, the Gaokao exam is not just a piece of paper. It's seen as a piece of paper that actually dictates your future, life opportunities, how it will shape your life. And because there's a huge societal narrative which tells you that you need to perform and your academic success absolutely matters, what it does that people do not go to achieve these standards, they have to go through mental depression, they feel anxiety, they stress, they even beat themselves up because they are unable to achieve these standards. That is ultimately harmful. Third analysis is the flaws of the education system. Look, going to school, there's a standardized merit system. There is one objective way to evaluate you regardless of your upbringings. doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, doesn't matter if you can actually understand it or not, everyone is required to achieve an objective merit system. And because of this, you still need to pursue higher elite pursuits and diplomas and degrees. And even if it's not in your personal interest, the problem is that it's actually it's acts as a one fit for all system. Because for
why?
I'll pick your eye after. The problem is that generally not all people can actually understand and exceed and have interest in things that actually want to pursue. People actually have different upbringing, they have different socio-economic backgrounds, but yet you have to put the same objective system towards all. Look, in so far of which I have clearly established the harm and why it's openly bad, perhaps that is the greatest tragedy of all. We think the harm of this narrative doesn't just lie in the anxiety, the stress that you feel, the sleepless nights that you get because of your exam. We believe that the harm exists more than that. The obsession we have with academic success makes you neglect other things in life that actually make you human. What makes you human? Things like emotional intelligence to form meaningful relationships, your capacity to have leadership to inspire others, the way you have your compassion to care, love, and make change for the world. These are things which we neglected because you have the inherent obsession on academic success. Think about the people who have been in your life. Think about the parents who have uplifted you when you were a small child. Think of the teachers who have put effort into you. Think of how society has upbringing you and the people who have been there when you were down. We as a society value these people because of their character, their kindness, their compassion, not because they were just an A+ student. So look, at the end of the day, what makes this society, what makes this the true essence of us as a civilization was never just a bunch of letters. It was us being human. For all these reasons, very important proposal.
Thank you, Prime Minister from the government.
The speaker has spoken for 7 minutes, 59 seconds, 759.
Now is the time for us to hear from the opposition leader.
Knowledge is power, and education is the key to unlock it. Good day and hello to the panel of educators, fellow debaters, and members of the floor. I, as the leader of opposition, will be presenting 4 things today. Firstly, I will be redefining the motion on our side of the House. Secondly, I will be stating what we, the opposition, stand for. Thirdly, we will be stating our status quo and mechanism. And lastly, I'll be rebutting the Prime Minister's claims and be stating one argument for the opposition's case. So, the motion today is, this House believes that academic success is overvalued in today's society. So, we divide academic success into 3 parts. Firstly, academic performance, the achievement of strong grades, exam results, and qualifications reflecting knowledge and effort. Secondly, academic development, development of critical thinking, problem solving, discipline, and intellectual skills through education. And lastly, academic advancement, the opportunities gained through education such as scholarships, university admissions, and career prospects. And then, overvalued means something is esteemed higher than its true fundamental worth. Today's society is defined as the current generation of our world. How they perceive a few things are much different now than how it was perceived and utilized decades ago. We have to fathom the fact that times have changed, and so did the expectations of society. Now, academic success is not the main pillar towards future achievements, but there are many other ways in this time and age. So we, as the opposition, we believe that today's society does not overvalue academic success, but instead, today's society rightfully relies on it. We live in a world where society already highly values and rewards non-academic paths, tech billionaires without degrees, social media creators, skilled tradespersons and artists. Academia serves as the most objective, standardized way for individuals with low-income backgrounds to achieve upward social mobility without academic metrics. Hiring and advancement would default into nepotism, networking, or arbitrary social capital. Society values academics because we need a high, verifiable bar of competence for people building bridges or performing high-risk jobs. Academic success should not be worshipped, but neither should it be dismissed. Society values it because education remains one of the most effective ways to create opportunities, competence, and progress. Our mechanism is that we believe society should continue to value academic success as a key indicator of knowledge, discipline, and competence by rewarding academic achievement through scholarships, university placements, and career opportunities. Individuals are incentivized to work and develop valuable skills. This ensures the important positions in society are filled by qualified and capable individuals while still allowing other forms of success to be recognized. So, the Prime Minister has claimed a lot about how in society we're going to compare people, how students will feel they need to be compared. But this is about how the students perceive that comparison panel. When they can perceive that comparison to motivate them to actually strive into success. Also, they talked about how this academic success becomes a person's works. But their claim is that society judges people based on their grades. Yes, society may sometimes do this, but not systematically. People are still judged by character, social skills, achievements, work ethics, and accomplishments outside school. Universities and employers increasingly use interviews, extracurriculars, portfolios, and work experience. And just now, he also mentioned about Gaokao, but let's remember, panel, China has a lot of people in its country. They use Gaokao as an exam so that they can see who are the best of the best, so they can fit those students into their rightful careers. Okay, now, moving on to my first argument. Good grades prove cognitive discipline. So what do I mean by this, panel? So getting good grades is not a magical path, but before I continue, yes.
This debate is not about whether or not academic success is good or bad. You have to prove on your side of the house of how essentially there are no harms that makes it overvalued.
So, the path to academics will still have harms, but we're here to prove that it's still valuable because of the effort that students put in. Now moving on, so getting good grades is not a magical path for students, panel. They still have to put in the effort. They still have to strive for success. They need that consistency of working hard to get those good grades, panel. So this will also prove the ability to delay gratification. So they, instead of like gaming or doom scrolling on TikTok, they choose to study those dry textbooks instead of getting addicted to social media. This proves on how they are very disciplined into committing into their getting good grades. You see, achieving good grades requires planning and prioritizing tasks effectively and efficiently because students must balance classes, homework, projects, examinations, and extracurricular activities. There's actually one theory called the human capital theory. So basically, this theory was pioneered by the Nobel laureate Gary Becker. So this theory argues that education directly increases an individual's productivity and economic value by upgrading their skills, knowledge, and cognitive capabilities. So this argues that academic success is not a hollow trophy panel or a superficial reward or a superficial signal. It is actually a genuine measure of transformed human capacity. Society rewards academic success because of high-achieving students become the highly skilled doctors, engineers, researchers, and innovators who push humanity forward. So, panel, why are academic grades important in showing discipline? So, employers cannot interview you for 100 years, panel. They're going to review those grades to see how reliable you are in studying, in putting in the effort to getting these good grades. This will prove to the employers trying to hire you that you have that cognitive discipline to put in the work for the future careers. So, and it also filters people who finish what they actually started and stay disciplined even when it all gets bored. So, when is this proven, panel? Grades in SPM isn't a lucky snapshot. It's a mathematical average of 4+ years of effort. In conclusion, grades prove a student effort and cognitive discipline they have put all their years of learning. That is all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition.
The speaker has spoken for 8 minutes, 16 seconds. 8:16.
Next, we would like to hear from the Deputy Prime Minister from the government.
In today's society, you can already see how in the forms of higher education, in the forms of getting a scholarship, there is a noticeable overemphasis on the fact that you need 9A+ to even apply for these scholarships to begin with. We believe that the world in this society is inherently problematic, and only on government side is where we can prove why. But before we begin, Assalamualaikum and a very good morning. I beg to most honorable adjudicators, worthy adversaries, Mr. Speaker, punctual timekeepers, beloved teammates on government, and all members of this hall. In my speech today, I'm going to be doing two things. First and foremost, I'm going to be responding to the problematic ideas coming from side of opposition. And secondarily, I'll be presenting my arguments to further substantiate the government's case. Now, responses. One of the main arguments that they have presented to you is that they believe that comparison can act as a form of motivation. First speaker goes on a long elaboration as comparison can help people feel motivated, and when they feel motivated, they're able to strive for these higher educations, right? Why is this problematic? Number one, the idea that you have to consider the fact that academics is a very pay-to-win game. For you to excel in academics to begin with, there are a lot of things that you need to have as a prerequisite. This looks like having good tutors, good classes, good courses, a good study plan. Insofar that there are billions of people who cannot necessarily afford this, we tell you that the idea of comparison is flawed. Then these people will actually feel much more worse on your side of the house because they cannot actually meet this comparison to begin with. Secondarily, they gave an example on how Gaokao was actually a good example to justify why was it good in the first place. Here's the problem. They talk about how, yes, even though Gaokao, it does determine the future for many people in China and has led to better futures, it does not justify the extreme psychological distress that is being caused, and unfortunately, the untimely deaths of people. People literally, I'm sorry to say this, they kill themselves because they are unable to meet a proper standard when it comes to the Gaokao exam. But thirdly then, and I think this is most important, all of their arguments are centered around explaining on why valuing academics is good. This is not what this debate is about. This debate was never primarily about if academic success being overvalued in today's society was good or bad. No, what they have to do is they have to tie it back to the motion and explain to you that is it either undervalued or perfectly valued. Because if the burden on government is to prove that it's overvalued, it is justified to say that their burden is to prove that it's undervalued. Does saying that it provides critical thinking tie it back to why it's undervalued? No. Does saying that there are a lot of systems that actually reward academic success to prove that it's undervalued? No. Nothing in their case actually responds with the heart of the motion and the spirit of the debate. Now, I think with those responses, we've tackled a large substantive from the problematic case coming from this first exchange. I would love to see what second speaker has to say next. Now, before I segue on to my arguments, are there any points? Alright, let's move on. Now, my argument then will have the tagline of why academic success being overvalued creates a lack of emphasis on necessary skills. The reason why I tagline my argument like this to begin with is to actually tie it back to the motion. Because when we prove the harms extensively and we correlate it back to what's happening in status quo, also known as today's society in this motion, we are actively contending with the heart of this motion. Now, let's look. First analysis is an extension to what my first speaker has said, is why academic success becomes the metrics to begin with. Because it is the most objective form of measurement. This is what the first speaker has already said. The fact that it has a numerical value attached to it, the fact that you can assign certain grades to it, makes it the most easiest and most convenient way of measuring, even though it's not the most ideal. The problem with this then is that it completely neglects other forms of intelligence and competency that can't necessarily be measured by numerical values. This looks like a creative person. This looks like a person with good leadership skills. But more drastically, it neglects people who have skills that you don't necessarily acquire from an academic standing. This looks like vocational skills. This looks like social skills. I will explain why this is relevant later on in my analysis. Now, moving on to the second layer of analysis, and this is the huge one, so pay attention. Why is the education system flawed in the first place, and what does it bring further harm? First of all,
Gaokao is conducted because China is a wide populated country. They have many applicants towards a particular university. For them to choose the best of the best, they need Gaokao to examine them. So how can you tell us that the Gaokao is just to neglect students? Can you please clarify?
No, what I said just now was, if it doesn't matter, I know that Gaokao is a way to determine most futures life, but that doesn't justify the immense psychological distress that is caused, as well as the deaths that actually do happen. Because these are the harms that prove that it's overvalued. China is an extreme example of this, but it's also prevalent in other parts of the society. Now, education system, right? First and foremost, the fact that it's very memory-centered, the fact that they put an overemphasis on you being able to memorize a textbook in 5 hours and you being able to answer practice quizzes. Even if you wanted to talk about higher order thinking skills or HOTS, right? We tell you that this still also follows a strict scheme that you have to abide by. The reason why I did not get full marks for my bio for my mid-year exam was because the HOTS questions that I answered did not necessarily align with the scheme that they have given. You know what this does? This limits the ability for you to think freely. But more drastically, it limits the development of these necessary skills. It neglects things such as soft skills, such as social skills, vocational skills, skills that are important because it gives hope to a certain group of people. What are these certain group of people? Second layer of analysis, the idea that, as I've mentioned earlier in my responses, there are billions of people who cannot play in this academic game, they cannot win in this academic game because of systemic inequalities that exist. You did not choose to be born poor. You were essentially screwed over by the moment you were born. You were born poor and not enough to play in the academic game. The problem is that there are still other ways for the poor to succeed in life. This looks like being able to enroll in a vocational skill, getting blue-collar jobs, vocational skills, handcrafting things. But the problem is that they believe that academic success is the only way for you to escape or to break out of this barrier because of this overemphasis placed in the first place. This is true in status quo. Now, Thirdly, and finally then, why is the shaping of values perceived by society? How does it look like? My first speaker has already said about social media and how comparison, but I'll explain two more. Number one, the idea of parents. The fact that parents were raised in a time in the 1990s where they believed that academic success was the only metric. You as a child, being the most proximate to your parents, would naturally take the instillment of what they've instilled into you. This is why you feel more pressured, and that's why my first speaker's analysis is even more like contentious to begin with, right? Now, what are the impacts? Very simple. Number one, you adopt a mentality where you work hard and enjoy life later. Secondarily, you neglect the idea that you can form different forms of intelligence, and you are turning a blind eye to other forms of success in life. And thirdly then, the most importantly, this causes psychological distress. So what have I done right in my speech? What I've done that what opposition could not have done in their first speaker is that I have tied it back to status quo. I have tied it back to the motion, and I explained why the harms necessarily amplifies it. And with that, incredibly proud to govern.
Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister from the government.
The speaker has spoken for 8 minutes, 17 seconds. 817.
It is now time for us to listen to the Deputy Leader of Opposition.
We do not value academic success because of grades alone. We value it because it represents knowledge, discipline, and the ability to contribute to society. Good day to the honorable adjudicators, respected speakers, fellow debaters, and members of the floor. I am the second speaker of the opposition team, and today my role is to rebut the second government speaker and state two new arguments. Firstly, panels, I have noticed that the first and second government speaker kept mentioning about how we debate wrongly because we brought up the bad and good of academic success. But panels, did you realize they also brought up the bad side of academic success, saying that it caused stress? So why are they trying to make us twist? Why are they trying to twist our words when they're doing the same thing as us? When we want to compare, we have to acknowledge the pros and cons. Other than that, panels, they kept saying that we don't focus on communication skills. But panels, let me remind you that in SPM, we actually have assessment tools. We take listening tests, speaking tests. So this proves that actually we do focus on communication skills. And other than that, panels, when we want to apply for university, when we want to apply for a job, we don't just show our grades and we get accepted straight away, or do we? Actually, we have to be asked. They ask us questions. They want to give us trials to see how we act in order to assure that we can do the job nicely. They don't look just at our grades. So I'm proving you to panels that society nowadays, we don't only look on grades, we focus on both communication skills and academic success, proving to you that we do not overvalue academic success. Panels, second of all, the second government speaker mentioned about themselves, about the hot question, right? But panels, how can they be sure that everyone will think the same as how he has mentioned, how he thinks that he cannot answer the hot question? Panels, that is why when you cannot answer the hot question, that means you're not thinking outside the box. Hot questions make you think outside the box in order for you to answer it. The answer isn't going to be in the textbook. You have to think logically in order to be able to answer that question. Other than that, panels, the second government speaker also kept mentioning about how academic success, you have to be rich in order to achieve it, supposedly. But panels, let me tell you, nowadays in society, we have scholarships, and just because you take tutoring doesn't mean you're going to get good grades straight away. Panels, if they mention tutoring, the alternative for the unprivileged people who are unable to afford for tuition, they can actually ask their teacher for one-on-one sessions in order to learn more about it. So it depends on how the persons take that opportunity in order to succeed in their academics. Panels. Second of all, when we already have we're in Malaysia, we are already focusing on B40. We already have MRSM in order to allow them to study better. We're not giving those who are rich only. We are focusing on how they are able to show that they are disciplined enough in order for them to succeed in academic success. Other than that, panels, the first and second government speakers kept talking about the burnout. But before I begin, yes.
Okay, in anything in this world, everything has a price to pay. If you pay more for tuition fees, if you pay more for courses, you have a much more higher chance. For these people who are underprivileged, they're essentially locked out and they have a much more lower chance. We're not saying that they suddenly cannot get scholarships. We're telling you that the chances are much more lower because of the systemic inequalities that exist in status quo.
Panels, even if they take tuition, but they don't try their best, will they really succeed? That is my question I want to ask back. We are not sure just because you take tuition means you're going to get good grades straight away. Even if you're unprivileged and you don't have tuition, meaning you have to work harder, who cares if you have to work harder? In order to assure that you get a better future, you have to work harder. Life is not easy. You have to work hard, you have to do sacrifices, and you have to face reality. We are not saying that the rich people can just dream big because they have tuition. They also work hard. How can you accuse the rich people of having a higher chance just because they go to tuition? They also have to try their best in order to keep up with the tuition, in order to make sure that they understand what they are learning. Other than that, panel, I'll go back to the rebuttal I left off on. They kept mentioning about mental health and burnout. But panels, let me tell you, pressure comes from many factors. It does not come from academic success alone. And why? And if pressure is so important, then if pressure comes from many factors and the problem is unhealthy, the problem isn't because of the academic success, but the problem is unhealthy expectations and poor support systems. Poor support systems, not society of academic achievement. Now I'll go on to my first point, my first argument, which is academic success promotes meritocracy by rewarding effort and ability. This is where I'll show you on how they kept talking about elitism, and we are going to show you that academic success provides equal chances to everybody. Panels, academic success provides a relatively fair and objective way for individuals to earn opportunities based on their hard work, knowledge, wealth, and performance, rather than their family background. Through exams, the way they do this is through exams, scholarship, and university admissions. Students from different backgrounds can compete using the same standards, meaning they won't look back on your wealth. They look on how you respond, on how you answer the question. Panel, this allows talented and hard-working individuals to improve their circumstances and access opportunities they might not have otherwise. This allows people, the underprivileged people that they can't bring up, to overcome those barriers. So instead of them taking academic success as something that they cannot achieve, they should use it as motivation, like how my first speaker has already stated multiple times.
Before 7 minutes,
panel,
please. Can I POI before 7 minutes?
Not now. Therefore, panels, society values academic success because it helps create a system where opportunities are earned through merit. This is not overvaluation, but it is a recognition of a system that promotes fairness and social mobility. Like how our stance has already stated, we believe that today's society does not overvalue academic success. Instead, society rightfully relies on it. Let me highlight that word. Now onto my second argument, panels. Academic success is important in fields that requires specialized knowledge and expertise. Panels, in professional fields such as medicine, engineering, law, and science, individuals need extensive knowledge and training before they can actually perform their responsibility effectively. Academic success helps demonstrate that a person has acquired the qualification valued, but because the nature of work requires it. Panels, academic success plays an important role to ensure that individuals are capable of handling responsibility that may affect people's life, safety, and well-being. In conclusion, panels, academic success is not overvalued in today's society. Society already recognizes multiple forms of achievement, and where academics are emphasized, it is because they are necessary for the demand of that particular field. And that is all from me. I rest my case.
Thank you, Deputy Leader of Opposition.
The speaker has spoken for 8 minutes, 28 seconds. 8 to 8.
I would like to call upon the third speaker from the government.
This debate is not about just giving us a grocery list of benefits of why academic achievements is necessarily good. You have to note, panel, that for you to win this debate, you have to prove either or. One, for government, we've already told you that we have to prove why academic success is overvalued in today's society. For their side of the house, they have to prove why all of the harms that manifest in status quo that does not constitute in this over-evaluation. Given the fact that they failed to do this, we think their case is flawed from the start, right? But before that, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good morning. I bid through honorable adjudicators, Mr. Speaker, punctual timekeepers, worthy opponents, beloved teammates, members of the floor. As the whip speaker, I'll be doing 3 simple things into this debate. Number 1, I'm recalling out the fallacies that come on side of opposition. Number 2, I'm providing the main issues into this debate and ultimately proving to you why we answer them. And lastly, I'll be comparing arguments and basically tell you why we're into this debate, right? But firstly, what are the problems on side of opposition? I feel like the first problem, panel, is on how technical they are. They are very assertive in their stance. Why do we say this? We say this because of the fact that throughout their first 2 speakers, they already claim that there's many other metrics for them to measure competency in society. Yes, we do agree that there are supposed to be other metrics of competency that can be measured. The problem then is that when they themselves say that academic success is the most objective, is the most simple, and is the most feasible way for you to see whether or not someone is knowledgeable or disciplined, we think that is the harm then that exists on their side of the house. But second call out then, right? Note, panel, that throughout their first 2 speeches, they have never actually engaged with the materials that my 2 speakers have given, right? Why do we say this? We say this because of the fact that when my first speaker talked about the psychological harms that come from this emphasis of academic success, the only assertion and claim that came from opposition was that, hey, this pressure is necessary because you want to build these diamonds. My literal second speaker has already told you that this number of people succeeding does not suddenly justify the fact that there are millions and millions of people who are going under this rigorous pressure, that are going under this mental deprivation and stuff like this, right? They never answered to this, right? But secondly, that note, panel, that they never actually proved to us how essentially the harms that are diluted on our side of the house. Given the fact that the next speaker is whip, I don't think we can save that case at that point in time. But then, what are the main issues into this debate? I feel like we have to take a step back and actually understand the spirit of today's motion, panel. The debate today is about whether or not academic success is overvalued. And we say on government that it is. Because why? The fact that we are able to prove to you that there are numerous harms through 4 metrics, that is the point which we're able to tell you that this extra emphasis, that this constant pressure that comes from society, that comes from social media is harmful to the people, can prove to us that it is overvalued. What did my first 2 speakers say? My first speaker has already told you that there is psychological harms that come from this. What did they tell you? They told you that psychological harm is somewhat justified. It is not justified for people to suddenly harm themselves. It is not justified for someone to be looking in the mirror every single day, calling himself not enough. Because even if second speaker wants to say that there are scholarships, there are helps for people who are less privileged, note panel that it is marginal at best. For you to even apply, for you to even achieve the amount of merit in the first place is going to be very, very hard. Because I feel it's intuitive to understand that obviously if you have more resources and more opportunities, for example, better tutoring, better materials, better worksheets, obviously that person is going to have an upper hand in terms of achieving academic success. They neglect this. They claim that, hey, as long as you put in the grit, as long as you put in the hard work, you can also achieve the same amount of success. Look, panel, let's take a step back. We are not living in Disney where we can fantasize every single thing. You are not essentially able to just achieve every single aspiration just because you work hard. There are structural inequalities, there are barriers, there are literal walls that are stopping these people. But yes, we are not saying it's impossible. However, the margin for success is very, very slim. Therefore, only on our side of the house are we actually able to prove that this emphasis is bad. Why? Because note panel, that when they tell you that academic success is the only metric of intelligence, after this, when they tell you that academic success is the only metric or is the only way of you to measure intelligence, we think that this is very harmful. Why? Because number one, there are many other soft skills that you also have to take into account. Things like critical thinking, things like creativity. And even if they want to try and cook up these benefits, we think that it is very marginal and very unlikely to do so. Why, panel? Because even in their case themselves, they don't actually give you the logical links as to how schools, as to how social media is actually able to determine whether or not you are creative, whether or not you are a critical thinker. They just care about the more numerical things, things that are feasible, things that are convenient for them to do so. And that is the exact problem, right? Now, why should we win today's debate? We win today's debate for a few reasons. Number one, the fact that we actually engage with their material. Note panel, side government is the only side that actually takes their arguments and responds to them. And you also realize, panel, that they're not even playing with the stance that they should be playing with. They're supposed to debate on whether or not it is less valued. But even if, let's say, we were to play with their stance and yes, it is perfectly valued, I'm going to talk about why it is problematic. If it was perfectly valued, there would not be a large portion of society that is constantly being neglected. There would not be a poor person who is going to be neglected of his like dreams to become an engineer just because he did not have the resources to complete his SPM, for instance, right? Because note panel, for a lot of these people who live in these rural areas, people who necessarily not have the access to education, but they had the aspirations to do so, these people are neglected on their side of the house. They fail to acknowledge them. We actually acknowledge them by understanding that there is an overvaluation, right? But then, on the four metrics, the first metric, we already proved to you how essentially this overvaluation compromises the idea of intelligence, right? We've already told you how that's problematic. Secondly then, the fact that it also neglects other critical values. We think that there is so much more to life, fundamentally, than just how good you are in answering mathematics, or how good you are at answering a history essay, for instance, right? We think that there's so much more in terms of your career. Because note panel, at the very core of it, the essence of school is supposed to be important to build you as an individual, or the essence of academics is supposed to be important for you to be built as an individual. The problem that arises in status quo then is that when people keep on hammering that this is the only gateway to success, this is the only way for you to break up from your structural barriers, we think that that is problematic. Third metric then, on how you're able to rule mental health. Note panel that this is vitally important. They never actually took down this claim, and if they did try to take it down in third speaker, it will be relatively too late. And number four, on the idea of delayed gratification, right? Note panel that this is exceptionally saddening for these people within status quo, right? Why? Because in note panel, I feel like given the fact that they're in their formative years, it's also fair for them, it's also fair for us to assume that they should be given some legroom for them to actually enjoy their lives. On their side of the house, they're basically programming these people to tell them to be robots because that is the quote-unquote only way for you to succeed. Panel, do not fall for their rhetoric. They're trying to play a soft case and saying that they also can get things like creativity, can also identify things like leadership. But in its essence, that is not how status quo works. Panel, we are debating the essence of status quo. We're talking about things that are happening right in front of us. Things like social media, where people are constantly comparing one another, telling you that, for instance, 2 A's in SPM is really bad, or you not finishing your high school education is bad. We think that that is something that is overvalued. We think that is harmful, given the fact that they don't actually tell us. And like note panel, they never actually even told us why it's not overvalued. They just told us why it's perfectly valued, right? I don't think that they're even engaging in the first place, right? And for all those reasons, side with government. Thank you.
Thank you, third speaker from the government.
The speaker has spoken for 7 minutes, 52 seconds. 752.
It is now time for the third speaker from the opposition to present his rebuttal.
If you think that rich people has a higher chance, then what is your solution for the underprivileged? You never provided anything. An academic success is not literal. It can be analogized as a road or a journey. It has bumpers, barriers, and bigger vehicles showing you the hurdles, obstacles, and better academic achievers. My side has proven to you why we should actually appreciate them who actually fighted this journey. The government might characterize that academic success is the only way for students to achieve success. Their reasoning is that an exam doesn't actually provide them anything. But that is how the government thinks in this debate. And let me prove to you why their whole stand is inconsistent from the first place and failed to be proven to you precisely. But we have to know something and fathom the fact that there are major incompetences happening in our daily lives. But before that, a splendid day I bid to the honourable panel of educators, worthy government side, and members of the floor. Today we foresee the motion of this House belief that academic success is value in today's society. My first two speakers have given to you our stance, argumentation, characterization, and status quo of what is actually happening in today's debates and our side of the House. As the third speaker, I will actually dismantle the entirety of their unproven case to you, label our team's case, and prove to you why we actually take on this debate. First of all, let's start with their Prime Minister. Right? Number one, they define academic success as it getting high scores in an exam. And then number two, they said that the comparison amplifies due to academic success on social media. And number three, Gaokao as an example. Panel, this entire argumentation is problematic for two reasons. Firstly, the definition of academic success. They tell us that it is high grades in test scores and exams. But panel, what they failed to show us is that a big chunk of academic success. We told you that academic success can be clarified and classified in three. Number one, academic performance. Then, academic development. And three, academic advancement. If they are the ones who are actually supporting this motion, they should have actually given a better definition. That definition only came from our side of the House. We value it as it should be a baseline that must be focusing on other factors as well, not only making it as a hierarchy that simply depends on what you answered on your paper. Secondly, they tell you that comparison amplifies due to the academic success. Let's understand something realistically by here. Like the government actually tells you, that themselves told you, that it is a comparison that may amplify. It is simply an amplification that we have to understand that not everyone has the same mentality to utilize that amplification. Not everyone wants to perceive exam as a competition towards others. That is a flawed misconception coming from their side of the House that never actually been addressed from any of their speakers. Take note, panel. They don't substantiate to you that why these assumptions are necessarily true in any ways. And they also stated that Gaokao, as an example, right? We have to understand something. Gaokao is conducted because of two reasons. Number one, China is a wide populated country. And when we even POI to them that they want to choose the best of the best, they continue to answer to us that it creates emotional distress. They never even engage to our BOI from the beginning. The government showed us one thing today. They twist our words, evidences, characterization towards them, but since I've addressed to you panel, please take notes. On the second argument, they tell you that exams are giving them a specific emotional distress. No. What they fail to appreciate is the broader actual implication of this issue. While they focus so narrowly on something of a minor occurrence, they don't see the bigger and major happenings. Sit down. Simply saying that emotional distress is its cost is highly assertive. They don't actually prove to us why it happens and how it actually affects the students from the beginning. They only touch the baseline to you, but they don't actually prove to you and elaborate further. Our side of the house actually told you that academics are simply a requirement towards scholarships, towards job applications. We never told you that academic is the only aspect that they must prioritize. And the second speaker also told you, just because you couldn't answer, the second speaker also told you that he couldn't answer the HOTS question in this biology test. Just because you couldn't answer the biology test doesn't mean other students can't. Doesn't mean the Gaokao exam students can't. And that is a big misconception coming from their side of the house. That is simply to show that we have to think more than what we limit ourselves, which actually provides a much better impact towards students' capability. Let's say a surgeon, for him to actually conduct a surgery and make sure that the patient is alive, in the surgical theatre, by actually the rule of MBBS, you need and can only be awarded a doctor position if you can actually prove your dominance and prove yourself in the exam. And we told you that not all of these fields meet the high expectation of exam results, something that they never actually addressed to us in this entire debate. And they say that our arguments are unjustified from the first place. But according to the Bronfman-Brenner's theory, which has 5 characteristics or 5 layers, let me prove to you why our case is more important than theirs in this total debate. If every layer of the society, from family and school microsystem to government institutions and policies, exosystem, to culture, macrosystem, or long-term development over time, chronosystem, and relations of families and schools, mesosystem, consistently reinforce opportunities and competent professionals, on what basis can you actually claim that it is overvalued rather than simply appreciating a necessity? None of it actually came out from their side of the house. I would like to ask something. Can the government side actually explain to us why academic success is overvalued rather than simply valuable, given that it remains one of the most reliable of the educational opportunities? A student proves themselves into intellectual schools like MRSMs, like SEKOLAH Sultan Alam Shah. For them to actually get into it, they need to prove themselves that they don't only have the results, they also have the curriculum, and they have more than that. But this debate is not at all about making students lose their potential, lose their future jobs, lose their lives. We tell you that it's simply something that makes a job application much more complete. Yes.
Let's engage in a simple thought experiment. Burnout and exorbitantly high expectations. Wouldn't you believe this happens because academic success is overvalued in today's society?
Well, the burnout doesn't happen just because of one person. It happens to one person. You need to explain to us why does it actually happen. Your first speaker and second speaker actually told us that it just happens, but you didn't actually prove to us why it happens. And panel, if the government simply tells you, and we are being so assumptuous, that the overvalue can create immense pressures and even kill and cause a student's death, but what do we tell you? We make it something valuable, not over-prioritized. It is simply a baseline. And at the end of the day, we have to always opt for making the future of students better, not play or juxtapositioning. Panel, as the opposition, we firmly believe that today's society does not overvalue academic success. Instead, today's society rightfully relies on it. And once again, it is merely an assessment tool. At the end of the debate, you are left with 2 worlds. One that defaults a society run by nepotism, and one that offers you a world that holds individuals to high standards. With that, I rest my case as a third speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, third speaker from the opposition.
The speaker has spoken for 7 minutes, 56 seconds. 756.
Ladies and gentlemen, a duration of 3 minutes will now be given to both teams to prepare for the reply speech. Your 3 minutes start now. As indicated by the timekeeper, the 3 minutes is up. It is the time for the reply speech. Let us first listen to the representative of the opposition team.
The government is asking you to vote for a world that lowers the bar, but our side of the house stands for a world that helps students clear it. Academic success is not overvalued. It is a vital proof of a student's mental stamina. Let us not destroy the standard. Let us improve it. Fix the system, not trash the goal. A pleasant day. I bid once again to the panel of educators, fellow debaters, and members of the floor. I, as the leader of opposition, stand here again to share our reply speech. So, we have spotted two clashes. First is elitism versus accessibility. So they have talked about how grades are heavily tied to privilege, how only rich kids can get tutors and have stable environments. But yes, academics, while imperfect, they still remain the main objective escalator for social mobility. Our academics are not based on your background panel, but in reality, based on your effort and cognitive discipline. There are still opportunities and chances so that everyone and anyone can succeed if you put in the right effort. Okay. Next is also nepotism versus realism. They tell you that students are easily lied to of getting a scholarship. They say it happens due to nepotism, but why? We told you that realistically it is still necessary. Now, moving on. We as the opposition have proved three things today. Firstly, we have proved to you why academic success is not overvalued, but in reality being celebrated for the students' achievements in their hard work and proving their cognitive discipline in their journey to academic success. Their journey allows them to improve their abilities for the better life. Like I said earlier, employers cannot interview you for how many hours, but they use the progress and your grades as a reliable source to predict how you will handle the future corporate workloads. Next, we have also explained how academic success is important in fields that require specialized knowledge and expertise. Individuals will need that extensive knowledge so that they can actually perform their responsibilities effectively. It will play an important role ensuring that individuals are capable of handling responsibilities. Lastly, we have also explained about how success promotes meritocracy by rewarding effort and ability, such as providing a relatively fair and objective way for the individuals to earn opportunities based on their hard work. This helps students with different backgrounds to compete using the same standards. Therefore, panel, this shows how it's not an overvaluation, but it is a recognition of a system that promotes fairness and social mobility. We as the opposition stand for a world where you are celebrated for your achievements. Panel, we want to remind you of all the challenges that the students face to reach this academic success itself. No progress to the path of success should ever be considered overvalued because the students, they are the ones who put in the effort. They are the ones constantly striving to achieve that academic success and effort. Celebrating it shouldn't be considered overvaluing, but instead a fair and rightful reward for their efforts and cognitive discipline. Academic success has led to us being able to achieve jobs such as in the field of medicine, engineering, and business by having and trying their best to understand how to do that job correctly. So that is all from me, panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition.
The speaker has spoken for 4 minutes, 5 seconds. 405.
Now, I would like to call upon the speaker from the government team to deliver his reply speech.
I disagree with opposition. Government's main agenda was not to put overvaluation on the bar. It is instead to allow billions of people to see that there are many more bars that are much more accessible for the level of systemic inequality that they are in. What does my reply consist of? 3 things. First and foremost, I'm going to be responding to the main, I'm going to be recapping their main substantive as well as how we dealt with it. Secondarily, I'm going to call out on what are the things that they did wrong in this debate. And thirdly, I'm going to then explain on why we deserve to take this debate. Now, on towards the main arguments coming from their case. I believe that there are 3. Number 1, the idea that this motion allows them to build motivation, because they talked about how comparison is actually a good thing. But how do we respond to this then? First of all, my first speaker has already extensively talked about the psychological harms that we're to incur. He talked about how identity is something that you will connect with academic success. Henceforth, these people that are able to achieve this level of academic success will feel very, very hurt. Secondarily, in also my speech, I've told you how society influences how you perceive values. First speaker talks about social media, while I extended upon it while talking about how parents will perceive your value instead. Secondarily, they talked about the benefits that they gain. They talked about how you are still able to gain critical thinking, leadership, social skills on their side of the house. Now, let's be charitable here. Even if we agree that they're able to gain it to a certain extent, we tell you that it is marginal at best, and we are still able to garner this much more effectively on our side of the house. With the main reason being that these people are actually not blind anymore, and they're able to see that there are other pathways to success instead of the overemphasized academics. Secondarily, the idea that even if we were to take the benefits at best, it still does not disprove the exacerbated harms that exist on our side. No point in their speech did they attempt to mitigate the harms. Just because you're able to gain benefits, if you're able to prove that the harms are much more disastrous and much more prevalent, we tell you that the harms should significantly outweigh the benefits. That's telling you how we responded to it very effectively. Thirdly, on the fact that it's perfectly valued. This came very later in the speech, but the way we responded to this is, throughout all 3 speakers, we've been consistent with our stance on how it is overvalued. While only on their side of the house, they're talking about how academics is good. Let me emphasize once more. This debate is not about whether or not academics is good or bad. This debate is about if society is overvalued or not. Only on our side you get an actually coherent case. Now, finally, what do we do right in this debate? Firstly, note that we are the only side that attempts to intersect with their case. We take their benefits at best, however, we still weigh them against the harms that exist on our side of the house, something that they did not even try to engage to. Only on our side of the house that we actually tried to make this a debate and not simply a presentation. Secondarily, note how they're on their side of the house, they've completely mischaracterized a lot of the arguments that we're running. They accuse us of saying that we are saying that academics are bad, even though in our stance we've already clarified that academics is something that we also value. However, we want to decrease the overemphasis on it and instead look towards more forms of coherency and intelligence. Finally, only on our side of the house that we actually give the winning metrics for you to win this debate. Across all three speakers, we've mentioned 4. Number 1, the fact that overvaluation compromises soft skills, the fact that it compromises actual intelligence, the fact that it creates a bad social life in the future, and how it psychologically immensely harms your mental health. Finally, we were the only side that was able to tie back to the motion as well as give a proper framing that has no logical links, that has no logical jumps and gaps to it. We were the only side that were down to earth to it. Incredibly proud to govern.
Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister from the government.
The speaker has spoken for 4 minutes, 8 seconds. 408.
Ladies and gentlemen, members of the floor, we have now heard the arguments presented by both the government and the opposition benches. The decision now rests in the hands of the education panel. The adjudicators will now proceed to finalize the marks and complete their ballots. Thank you, Chief Adjudicator. The result envelope has now been entrusted to the Chair and will remain sealed until the announcement of results during the closing ceremony. The House will now stand adjourned while the adjudicators retire briefly to confer and determine the recipient of the Best Speaker Award for this grand final round debate.
Ikut lah, jauh ke? Pandai lah. Dah, nak. Jom lah, nak. Jom lah. Tak ada. Saya Haikal, Muhammad Isman. Diamlah Firas. Tak. Aku jap Haikal, aku tak lalu kat sini. Ramai tak boleh. Stupid tu.
Because I've never seen
I may now invite the Chief Adjudicator to deliver the oral adjudication.
Sorry.
All right, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Assalamualaikum and very good morning to principals, teachers, debaters, and members of the floor. All right, before I begin with the debaters, this is not your typical OA. This is a general OA. This OA is very tricky because I have to deliver the OA without letting anybody know who won. So it will be very general, and so let's start by giving credit to where credit is due. The number one, thank you to the host, such a beautiful place, Harriet Ward University. Thank you to the organizers, JPWPP, am I right? Because I'm used to JPNS, GPS, GPM. It's a bit longer. Okay, so let's start with what the motion is about. Okay, kudos to the organizers for choosing such a good motion. A good motion is something that is currently there's an issue that we all face, and a good motion has always two sides. So the team who deciphers the motion deeper, better, has an edge. So what is the issue that this motion brings? Okay. This few years we keep on listening about TVET. So TVET, the government is putting millions of ringgit into TVET. And why is that? Because of this. Well, the motion is not there. It was there. The reason is the motion itself, because academic success has been overvalued. And they have deciphered it correctly. What they did correctly was they used all the debating skills that they have learned from the teachers. Kudos to the teachers, trainers, seniors. Right? What skills did they use? All right. When they were speaking, we were going this and then this and then this. They actually used skills. They were using the ethos, pathos, logos, and we did not realize that they were persuading us. And then what else did they do? They had a strong opening and closing. They had foreshadowing how bad the academic success, emphasis on academic success has brought us into what it is today. And they, on the other hand, were telling that no, academic success is the reason why we are what we are today. So that is the debate. And they had framing, and they had world building. They said, in our world, their world is not as good as our world. Which world is good? We'll decide. Okay? And they had the spirit of the motion. So the spirit of the motion is basically deciphering what the motion is about. And the issue is very real, very current, and it will affect you guys and all the young people around. Yeah, I'm old, it doesn't affect me. And both teams are consistent with their stance. Means when the first speaker announces the stance, all three speakers go back to the stand. They all go back to the stand, and they keep reminding us what they said in the beginning, and they go back that way. Okay, next, why I said that they were trained well. They trained well. Means they were trained by the people who trained to them, and they also accepted all the skills that were given to them well, because they used words that were needed to give the emotional effect, words that were needed for us to understand what they are trying to tell. So some of the words that they used were elitism, nepotism, meritocracy. What else did they use? The systemic inequality, marginalized. Yeah, those were the words. Okay, so let's talk about, because I cannot say things that will show the winner, right? So let's talk about the main clashes. Okay, the main clashes. Okay, before that, basically they did it correct, because this debate is not about whether academic success is important or not. They both agree it is important and it is used. It is the disproportionate for them, it is disproportionate, and for them, it is exactly what we need. So that is the debate. So they were saying you debated wrong. Let's address that. They both debated right. Okay. So their job is to say that if you overemphasize on academic success, this is what's going to happen. And their job is to just say, no, academic success is what it is, because here, out of the millions of people, the marginalized people will be left out because of the overemphasis. Here, the marginalized people will have a route to work hard and get to the top. So they are trying to prove to us which world is better. So the first clash is, what should society value? Should society be concerned about the academic achievement at the expense of other valuable forms of achievement, which they all said what were the other forms of achievements. But they countered that by saying, hey, our SPM has speaking, reading, this and that, it has hot spaces, it has many things which covers already everything. So this debate is quite, they both are challenging each other. Because what they said no. What they said no. So that is a good debate. So basically what I'm trying to tell you is the quality of debate in Putrajaya is at par with kebangsaan. Okay, so proposition argued that society places disproportionate emphasis on academic achievement at the expense of other valuable forms of talents and contributions. That's what they did. And opposition, meanwhile, defended the idea that academic success deserves significant recognition. Then you all talk about, is it Gaokao? I heard about Gaokao, I know it's bad, but now I know why it's bad or why it's good. So they say it's bad because all these people, did anybody actually committed suicide? From Gaokao? Yes, people committed suicide. But they say China is huge. Without Gaokao, how can they know who should go and who should not? So both sides are correct, right? Okay, clash 2. Is academic success a fair measure of ability? So proposition question the extent of which examinations and grades reflect the full range of skills. Okay, whether the academic and can they assess everything. And opposition argued that the academic achievement remains one of the most practical, because you cannot interview people for 100 hours, something like that. But you can give them an exam and you can actually look at that exam. But they say the exam doesn't show everything. I can only stop there. I cannot say who did it better, because you know who will win. So clash number 3 is, what are the consequences of society's emphasis on academics? They have stated clearly on the marginalized people, they have nowhere to go, and they have stated clearly the marginalized people have somewhere to go. So, and these clashes, the way they tackle these clashes, shows that they have done their homework and they understand what is happening. So with that, I will end my oral education, and congratulations to everybody.
Thank you, Chief Adjudicator, for your insightful adjudication. Ladies and gentlemen, the results of this grand final round debate will be announced during the closing ceremony. On behalf of the organizing committee, we would like to commend both teams for the exceptional quality of debate, dedication, and sportsmanship they have demonstrated throughout this competition. Reaching this stage is a remarkable achievement, and both teams should be immensely proud of their accomplishments. With that, I hereby declare the grand final round debate of the English language debate competition for secondary schools Putrajaya State Level 2026 officially concluded. Thank you.
But then I want to say that how nasib dalam
Dia kan auto kan.
dia ada button. I takut I tersalah tekan.
Kalau YouTube dia tak reti sangat main dia. Ni main dia. Sheila. Oh, tadi pepek. I love video.
Close.
Break highlight.
Okay, Assalamualaikum and good morning, everyone. Okay, we are going to have a short break around 10 minutes. Okay, and the ceremony will start in 10 minutes time. Thank you.
Okay.